All right. Good afternoon. I know a lot of you have been asking me for reaction on the decision taken in the International Court of Justice in The Hague. So since you've asked me, I will tell you a reaction from the Secretary General's point of view. The Secretary General takes note of the order of the International Court of Justice delivered today in The Hague, indicating additional provisional measures in the case of South Africa against Israel concerning the, quote, application of the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide in the Gaza Strip, end quote. In that regard, the Secretary General notes the court's decision to order Israel inter alia in accordance with its obligations under the Genocide Convention and in view of the, quote, the worsening conditions of life faced by civilians in the Rafah Governorate, end quote, to, quote, halt its military offensive and any other action in the Rafah Governorate which may inflict on the Palestinian group conditions of life that could bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, end quote. Further, the Secretary General takes note of the court's order to Israel to maintain open the Rafah crossing for unhindered provision of urgently needed basic services and humanitarian assistance. He also notes the court's instruction to Israel to take effective measures to ensure the unimpeded access to the Gaza Strip of investigative bodies mandated by competent organs of the United Nations to investigate allegations of genocide. The Secretary General further notes that the court reaffirmed and called for an immediate and effective implementation of its order of 26 January and 28 March 2024, indicating provisional measures in that case. He also notes the court's reiterated its concern over the fate of the hostages abducted during the attacks in Israel on 7th of October, who remain in captivity, and the court called for their immediate and unconditional release. The Secretary General recalls that pursuant to the Charter and to the statute of the court, decisions of the International Court of Justice are binding, and he trusts that the parties will duly comply with the order from the court. In accordance with the statute of the court, the Secretary General will also promptly transmit the notice of provisional measures ordered by the court to the Security Council. Just staying on Gaza, the humanitarian situation there. Our humanitarian colleagues report that aid organizations were able to reach Al-Aqsa Hospital in Deir el-Balah with about 15,000 liters of fuel. UNICEF warns that oxygen generators at the hospital will shut down without consistent fuel delivery, putting the lives of more than 20 newborn babies at risk. It is critical that more fuel enter Gaza and that humanitarian organizations can work in safety as hostilities intensify. In northern Gaza, just one hospital, and that's Al-Auda Hospital, remains partially functional, but it is currently inaccessible to us. Gaza's remaining health facilities are struggling to operate amid ongoing shortages of fuel, equipment, and medical items. Our humanitarian colleagues also tell us that since the start of the Rafah operations, the entry of aid and supplies into Gaza has been extremely limited. Between the 7th and the 23rd, just over 900 aid trucks, including about 800 carrying food supplies, have entered Gaza through all operational points of entry. Travel announcement. The Secretary General will travel on Sunday to Antigua and Barbuda to take part in the 4th International Conference on Small Island Developing States. He will first attend the high-level closing session of the Small Island Developing States Business Network on Sunday afternoon. On Monday, he will address the opening ceremony of the conference, where he will reiterate the UN's support for the aspirations of small island developing states, from halting and mitigating the impact of climate change to building resilient economies and fostering safe, healthy, and prosperous societies. He will also call on the international community to support small island developing states in the challenges they face, and will underscore that they are a test case for climate justice and financial justice. He will also hold a series of bilateral meetings with leaders, including Gaston Alfonso Brown, the Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda. And on Tuesday, the Secretary General will take part in the high-level meeting on resource mobilization for small island developing states. We expect him back in these United States and these United Nations on Tuesday afternoon. Staying in the Caribbean region and Haiti, our humanitarian colleagues tell us that the price of staple food remains high in the capital Port-au-Prince and surrounding areas amidst an already dire food security situation, as we've been telling you now for quite some time. In mid-April, the cost of the food basket in the West Department, and that is the department where Port-au-Prince, the capital, is located, was 20% higher than in January of this year. The Food and Agriculture Organization tells us that the situation has not improved since then. The resurgence of gang-related violence has added pressure on prices due to scarcity of essential products. If domestic agricultural production does not improve and insecurity persists, the price of staple foods is likely to remain high for the rest of this year. The number of people facing high level of acute food insecurity, which translate to IPC 3 and 4, according to our metrics, is expected to reach a record level of 5 million men, women, and children. That is half of the population by the end of June. Since early March, the World Food Program has supported nearly 100,000 displaced people in 80 sites in Port-au-Prince metropolitan area, with about 885,000 hot meals. Turning to another horrendous humanitarian situation, but in Asia and in Myanmar, where the humanitarian crisis is continuing to deepen, with the entrenched conflict putting civilians at even greater risk. The situation in Rakhine is particularly alarming. Despite the soaring humanitarian needs, access restrictions remain severe. At the height of the dry season, water scarcity has been widely reported. An estimated 1.6 million people lack access to hospital care in central and northern Rakhine State. As the monsoon season approaches, strong winds and heavy rains have already hit several townships in Chin, Mangwe, Sangeng, and northern Shan regions in recent months, damaging and destroying civilian properties and infrastructure. Despite these challenges, our humanitarian partners in Myanmar continue to deliver assistance to people in need, reaching almost 1 million people during the first quarter of this year. This year's humanitarian appeal for Myanmar is just 11% funded, with only $110 million in the bank and $993 million US actually needed. Yet another humanitarian crisis we need to keep highlighting, and you did hear from our OCHA colleague yesterday about Sudan. I want to focus particularly on North Darfur, where our colleagues at OCHA tell us that the humanitarian situation for an estimated 800,000 civilians in Al-Fasher and surrounding areas in North Darfur continues to deteriorate as the armed clashes between the army and the RSF continue. The fighting has reportedly forced thousands of people to flee since May 10th, caused hundreds of civilian casualties. Unfortunately, in Al-Fasher South Hospital, which is the only functioning hospital in that state, only 10 days of supplies are left, with an urgent need to restock the hospital. More than a dozen trucks carrying aid for more than 121,000 people have been trying to reach Al-Fasher for over a month, but the current security situation is making it all but impossible. Looking at the wider Darfur region, despite insecurity and severe access constraint, one WFP truck convoy carrying 1,200 metric tons of food and nutrition supplies for some 117,000 people was able to cross into North Darfur yesterday from Chad through the Tine crossing. It is critical these trucks are allowed to safely and directly continue to their destinations in central and South Darfur. While this latest development is welcome, it is not enough, as you can well imagine. In order to stave off famine in Darfur and across Sudan, we need the cross-border and cross-line routes to open. Lastly, an update from our peacekeepers in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, where they have been doing a joint operation they conducted with the Congolese armed forces against the Codeco armed group. That operation led to an exchange of fire with members of the group near the town of Uzi, which is about 15 kilometers south of Jugu in the Ituri province. The Codeco members retreated from the area. UN peacekeepers also dismantled 6 illegal checkpoints by the same group near Uzi. The operation was conducted over a few days and covered about 15-kilometer radius around Jugu. It took place from the 18th to the 22nd of May, but we just received the update last night. As part of the mission's protection of civilian mandate, peacekeepers established blocking positions, conducted extensive patrols, and provided medical services to the local population. The mission continues to monitor the situation. Busy on the International Days calendar. No money, but I do have a quiz for you. Does anyone know what a markhor is? Yes?
I'm ready today.
Okay. What is a markhor? Your microphone, please.
Oh, microphone, please. 'Cause I looked it up when I saw
Okay. What is a markhor?
It is a goat, and it lives in Pakistan and Afghanistan.
Very good. Today's the International Day of the markhor. Markhors are the largest of the wild goats and are found in the mountains of Central and South Asia. Preserving the markhor and its habitat is a significant opportunity to bolster regional economies. We now have a poster girl for the International Day of the markhor. And tomorrow is a busy day. First marks the start of the week of solidarity with people of non-self-governing territories. Tomorrow is also Africa Day. The Secretary General says in a message that the continent's young and growing population, rich natural resources, breathtaking beauty, and cultural diversity give it an outsized potential. And lastly, it is World Football Day tomorrow. 100 years ago today, the first international football tournament took place with representation of all regions. That event happened during the Summer Olympics in 1924. And last but not least, you may come in on Monday, but you will be alone because it's Memorial Day. We will not be briefing, but we will remain available. Edie, I'm sorry, I do have to recognize our winner. Yes, please.
Steph, on the ICJ decision, do you think that this will make it easier for UN aid operations on the ground?
Well, the proof will be in the implementation. The only way things will get easier for the UN is if we see an end to the military action, we see a humanitarian ceasefire, we see the creation of an environment in which we can have unfettered humanitarian access and during which all the hostages can be released. Yep.
One more. You mentioned the part about that they should let commissions of inquiry and fact-finding missions. And so does the Secretary General plan to take advantage of this ruling and send one?
Well, there is what the court has decided, what the court has called for, which we've always called for access for investigative bodies. But obviously, unless the facts on the ground change, it is not likely that anyone will be able to travel there soon. Anade, then Edie.
So following up on Maggie's question about investigatory bodies, how prepared is the UN to go in? So say theoretically the ICJ orders were implemented as they were requested today, as soon as today. Will the UN team be ready to go, and who will make up part of those teams?
Well, it depends on, there is the Human Rights Created Commission of Inquiry, which, if you'll recall, Pramila Patten encouraged the Israelis to allow it to look at the crimes that took place during October 7th. It is a matter of the country listed in the court to allow it. The UN is always, we're ready to mobilize.
Can I follow up? Mm-hmm. When you mobilize, how big a team would you put together? Do you know who would be part of it?
I think those are hypotheticals that I'm not able to answer at this point. Edie.
Thank you, Steph. One last question on the ICJ. Have either the Secretary General or Tor Wennesland spoken to anyone in Israel about implementing this resolution?
The Secretary General has not. We can check about Tor Wennesland.
Secondly, and forgive me if I missed this, but did the Secretary General have any reaction to the Security Council's adoption this morning of a resolution demanding the protection of humanitarian workers and UN personnel in conflicts?
We very much welcome that resolution. We would also welcome any and all actions that member states will take on the ground to implement that resolution. This year has been a tragic year for UN staff, for humanitarian workers. Anything that can be done should be done.
Are there any figures? Are there any figures on the number of UN staff who have been killed in conflict areas?
There are figures. I will share them with you. What I can tell you is that the Secretary General will take part, I think, in next week in the annual event honoring fallen UN staff. But I will see what figures I can give you today. Amélie, then Deji, then Tony.
Thanks, Steph. It's been a week now that the floating dock has been operational. Can you give us some kind of oversight of, idea of how much has been through the dock, if any has been arrived to the WFP warehouses and distributed afterwards, or part of it has been looted, as you mentioned the other day?
We took possession, WFP is there in the lead, took possession of 97 trucks since the floating dock came into operation. There were a number of trucks that were, as we put it, where people self-distributed, but the trucks themselves did make it to. We did not lose any trucks, and that was in the first 2 days. I think the operation is very much stabilized. WFP have found various routes to get to its warehouse in Deir el-Balah. From there, they then notify their partners. Some are UN agencies, some are non-UN agencies, they're international NGOs, that the goods can be taken. Some of those goods have also been been shared with large feeding kitchens, but it has been working, I think, after a rocky start, but the situation, as I said, is stabilized. That being said, it remains. It does not replace what we want to see, as we've been saying, which is a massive aid coming in through land routes. Deji, then Tony.
Which is actually my question. UNRWA suspended its humanitarian operation in Rafah due to the amount of humanitarian aids.
Yeah.
Has the operation resumed? What's the situation?
I've not heard that it has because because of the continued fighting, but also you'll recall a large number of men, women, and children moved from Rafah to other places, and UNRWA and others are basically following people where they are to try to help them.
And on the ICJ, sorry, I'm going back to the ICJ ruling. Just now we talked about the investigations. I think the original words is the competent organs to investigate. Let me walk back a little bit. Who will be competent in the UN to make investigations?
There are different legislative bodies that can create investigatory mechanisms, create fact-finding mechanisms. So there's a whole. I don't know what the word in panoply. There's a palette of choices within the UN framework, and one that member states have to decide upon.
Any of these organs showed any intention to do this job?
I think you know some of, notably on the Human Rights Council, things have already been in terms of fact finding and others, but it'll be up to member states. Monsieur.
Thank you. Shukran, Steph. My question is always, it's a follow-up about my colleagues as well regarding the ICJ. I just want, like, if you can clarify for us what's coming next in this, because you mentioned in the reaction that you just shared with us that the SG will promptly transmit the notice of the provisional measures ordered by the court to the Security Council. So, can you elaborate for us a little bit?
What's coming
happen?
next? I mean, that's a question for the court itself, because this is an ongoing case. So we're only reacting to what the decisions of the legal part of the United Nations, right? The court, the judicial part, has decided. As part of the statute of the court, the Secretary General has to transmit its results to the Security Council. He's doing that. What is next is obviously whether or not the decisions of the court are implemented or not implemented. What is next for us is continuing every effort to deliver more humanitarian aid to the people in Gaza.
And also, just a quick follow-up, it says also the Secretary General trusts that the parties will duly comply with the order from the court. What does the Secretary General really makes him, like, what makes him feel that this time is going to be different?
The Secretary General has no crystal ball. I mean, when we say that, we're referring to what the Charter says, what the statute says. As with, I mean, and let's be honest here, as you well know, member states have a responsibility to enact and to abide by Security Council resolutions, decisions of the court and others. Whether or not they choose to do so is a question you need to ask them, but there's a duty under the Charter of the UN and the statutes of the court. Javier.
Steph, the Israeli government today prohibited the Spanish consulate to provide services to Palestinians in the West Bank as a measure of retaliation. What's your reaction?
That's a bilateral issue between Israel and Spain, and we do hope it gets resolved for the benefit of all those involved that are served by that outpost, that Spanish outpost. Madame.
Steph, almost every week or every 2 weeks, you're telling us that the Secretary General is traveling. Is it wise, when the world is getting like crazy, that the Secretary General is traveling so much?
Well, the Secretary General can actually keep track and be involved in the issues of the day regardless of where he is. He was in the Middle East, which was important last week. He also has to keep involved and keep the focus on the long-term issues that are facing the world. A Secretary General, any Secretary General needs to be able to juggle. And I think this Secretary General has shown his ability to juggle. And I can tell you, even if he's on the road at the SIT summit, he will focus on what is being said. He will focus on his message of climate justice, of economic justice for small island developing states who have suffered so much because of conflicts that they have no part in, because of climate change, because of COVID. People still need help. He will also, at the same time, very much remain involved on the issues of the day, whether it's what's going on in Gaza, in Ukraine, or Sudan. Yes, you're the goat lady. You can ask 2 questions before I go to the screen.
Don't label me the goat lady.
No, sorry.
Steph, on Haiti, 3 young missionaries from a U.S.-based charity were killed Thursday in a gang attack on the outskirts of Port-au-Prince. Just any reaction?
We send our condolences to their families, to their colleagues. It is just another example of the violence that spares no one in Haiti.
And one other, sorry,
yes, ma'am.
Since I've got the mic. Reuters reported that Putin is possibly ready to halt the war in Ukraine with a negotiated ceasefire that recognizes the current battlefield lines. Have you seen anything in your contacts with your Russian counterparts about any indication the climate is turning towards talks?
No,
Are you, not finished, are you encouraged ahead of the Swiss Peace Conference next month?
I don't have an update for you on the Swiss Peace Conference in from the UN side, I mean, we've seen the report by Reuters, but we have no specific comment. I don't see anybody on. Oh, I do see one hand raised. I can't read. The writing is too small. But open your mic, whoever has raised their hand on screen.
Hi, it's Eric with Kyoto.
Oh, hi, Eric. Yeah, thank you.
Steph.
Go ahead. Go.
So also on figures, do you have the latest numbers on casualties of UN personnel in Gaza since October 7th?
194.
Okay, thank you.
No. Okay. Enjoy the long weekend, and if we speak over the long weekend, it will not be a happy conversation. So, what? Let's try not to. Let's try to ignore.